Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today guys, today it is finally time. It is September. So it is finally time to start cranking up the Allen propaganda machine. Read this book, read this book, read this book. So good, this book is so good. 4. Boosh, The Fall of Babel. Book 4 in the Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft and the concluding volume. This is an advanced reading copy that was sent to me so kindly by Orbit Books. I want to thank Orbit Books and Angela, the publicist, and Josiah Bancroft. Thank you so much for arranging for me to be able to read this. Again, if you have not heard me talk about Senlin Ascends, I'm not certain you've watched my channel before, because this was the very first book since I started BookTube last year. This is the very first book series that I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I've never read anything like it. It was the first new series that I latched onto after starting BookTube, and I have not been able to get enough of it. It is just so good and so unique, and the whole series is fantastic. And after Hod King, you're just waiting like, what is gonna happen next? How is Bancroft going to wrap all of this up? And then you see on Amazon, where Amazon's showing it's like 387 pages, which is shorter than Senlin Ascends after Hod King was near 600. And you're like, how's he going to wrap it up in that short amount of time? Worry not. This book is actually like 640 pages. It is the longest of the book, and it needs it because we're spread out all over the place. So guys, this is going to be as non-spoiler as possible. What this means is that it will have spoilers for books 1, 2, and 3 of the Books of Babel. It's all the way through Hod King, spoiling. And there will not be any spoilers at all. However, I will be talking about characters in Fall of Babel. So scenarios, especially at the beginning of the book. So while there are no spoilers, I will talk about kind of the setup, especially of the beginning of the book, and kind of where everyone starts out at the beginning of Fall of Babel. So it will be significantly less than like a trailer, a movie trailer you would see. But if you don't like anything, I get it. Well, if you didn't like anything, why would you click on this video, right? You want some deets. You want some deets. I will be releasing my spoiler-filled thoughts after the book is actually out, because there's no reason to release one prior to the book. So guys, without wasting any more time, let's talk about, did Josiah Bancroft stick the landing? And I'll answer that question later. To start with, guys, this is brilliant from the first page. The prologue is a recap of the previous 3 books, and it is an in-world recap done from the perspective of Oren, the Pelfian, gossip columnist or culture columnist. And so he is recapping last season's smash hit, The Hod King. And he recaps it in this just completely pretentious way, and, is self-referential. And it's just this super meta in-world way to recap all the things that happen. It's hilarious. Even the recap is brilliantly written and has that signature kind of whimsical humor that we come to expect from Bancroft's writing. It's absolutely brilliant. And Bancroft's writing continues to be a strong point of this novel. He is such a brilliant wordsmith. He describes things so well, but so differently than you would think to describe it, or that other authors would think to describe it. When you read this weird metaphor or weird simile, and you're just like, yeah, it is exactly like that. You're right. For example, there's a really specific line from the Hod King where the Earl is kissing Xenia. Oh, bless Xenia's heart.
It's just no fair. My princess never comes. I'll never get anything I wish for.
Kissing Xenia's neck, and it says his lips were like 2 snails on a garden wall. It's that's so gross, and that imagery is that evokes just such a reaction. But it's and it's leaving wet streaks. And it's just, it's so gross, but it's just brilliant. And that prose continues in this. And one of the things that I love about Bancroft's writing is because my wife doesn't really like violent books, but she has read these books because Bancroft, when he's describing violence, he describes these horrific acts of violence, but he describes it in the same kind of whimsical, jaunty, like classical prose that he does everything else, that he does when, weird stuff is happening. And so it feels very tonally dissonant, that adds this extra layer of just like unsettledness to the violence. It's all very casual because it's all like, oh yes, and then, it's all very like, it's just very airy prose to describe horrible things that occur. If you've read the other 3 books, you know what I'm talking about. That continues even more here. And so this book, like The Hod King, is broken up into parts. Really, they're all broken up into parts. But in part 1, at the very beginning, in chapter 1, we get what many of you have probably been waiting for, and that is Adam. Like, we revisit Adam. And in that way, part 1 kind of feels like Hod King part 4, but you couldn't really have Hod King, be another 200 pages long. But we see what Adam has been doing for the last book, and that is as far as I will say. But this section where we get to follow Adam by himself, and more importantly, Adam without Valletta, that made me really finally care about Adam and feel for Adam and root for Adam, because I have disliked Adam since book 1, when he betrayed Senlin not once but twice. I don't care why he did it. He did it. That is what matters. And when he's like, in Hod King apologizing to Iran and saying, like, is he ever going to forget? It's like, you're not sorry. Like, you do it again. You did it for your sister, and you would do it again. So quit pretending like you feel bad about it when you would literally do the same thing again. And so Adam is going on he has this journey of self-discovery. Who is he? His entire life, he's had to take care of Valletta, or he's felt like he had to take care of Valletta. And so who is he without Valletta? And then even after him and Valletta have been together and he's been with the crew, he has these roguish tendencies and kind of this deceitful nature about him it does help him out in existing within the tower's, ecosystem. But even being with the crew around Edith, and more importantly around Tom, that has kind of like forced him to be a different person than he thought he was. And so here he is without Senlin, about whom he says Senlin isn't good at any of these things he's tried to do because he is unbendable. He's not a good pirate, he's not a good killer, he's not a good spy, because he's unwilling to make these kinds of compromises. His like irritating idealism, it prevents him from being any good at any of these things the tower requires. And so Adam has to decide, what kind of person is he? Like, is he, a ne'er-do-well and, a bad guy? Is that who he is? Or can he pull from all of this, like from what he's learned caring for Valletta, and what he's learned with the crew, and, what he's learned on the streets of the tower? What kind of person is Adam? And it's really cool to see him go on this journey in this, this area at the top of the tower where we left him near the end of Arm of the Sphinx. And here we see all kinds of like bizarre like architecture, and we actually end up learning in this book, we learn, guys, there's so much lore. We finally get lore. Like, we get lore about the tower and the bricklayer and the Sphinx and the medium and all of this stuff. Not every question is answered, but several of them are, while asking several more. So you'll just have to read and figure out which of your questions are answered and which will remain a mystery. So meanwhile, we have the crew who have just rescued Mario and Mario.
It's me, Mario!
So meanwhile, we have the crew of the State of Art who have just rescued Maria and Olivet, and Anne has tagged along, and Bancroft does such a great job of portraying like the stress that they are all under. All of them are reeling from the events of the end of the Hod King, where, Valletta was shot in the head and then brought back by Redelman. The immense amount of violence that took place at the port, where Irene killed Eigengrau and Irene killed the prince, and everyone had to kill a bunch of people on the ship as they tried to board it, and Ferdinand died. And Maria has been living in a complete state of terror for the last near year. They've lost Senlin, and Edith isn't super clear about the instructions going from this point on, even though she's discovered the plans for the Hod King in that book, and thought she made a friend with the other Wakeman, who turned out to be, a bad guy. And they are under such intense pressure, and Edith doesn't know what to tell them, and so they are sniping at each other, and it is not the comfortable, companionship of the crew that we wanted there to be. And I think this is done really well by Bancroft, because very easily they could have just been like, okay, yes, we're the good guys, let's go save the day. And it's not that. There's a lot of, what do we do? Why do we do this? Why, who made you the boss? Like, don't talk to me like that. There's a lot of that going on as they each deal with their personal trauma. Every one of them is scarred by the events of the Hod King. If anyone is kind of like a central rock who seems kind of okay, it's Anne, but even Anne is suffering on the inside. It is very, very just tough to watch these characters deal with their emotional baggage, especially like Maria, who has PTSD from being under threat of having her baby brutally murdered by the Duke and forced to, do everything that he commands, or, he'll slit the throat of the baby. And Edith feels all this pressure on herself. And of course, Senlin had confessed in Hod King to Maria that he kissed Edith. And so there's that tension as well that has to be dealt with, because Edith knows what happened and Maria knows what happened, and at some point they've got to deal with that tension as well, and Bancroft handles it so beautifully. And then in Tom's side, we last left Tom. He had pledged his allegiance to Marat and the Hod King, and Marat's mission to elevate the Hods and bring down the Sphinx. And so from Tom's point of view, we get to check in with Fingal and Taru and Marat himself, and we get to see what Marat's real goals are, how Marat's brain works. We see a lot about the types of tyranny and demagoguery, the ways that are used by people in power to manipulate people onto their side. It's the study in tyranny here, with just Marat alone, the study in tyranny is absolutely brilliant. Marat is such a compelling antagonist in this. He is a tin pot dictator, of course, but watching Marat's arrogance and seeing him interact with Tom, it's just super tense, and it's really, really good. And everything, all three of these threads all lead to a gripping conclusion that is just, oh my gosh, like the end of this book, the when you hit that rising action and you hit the climax and everything happens, just boom, 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 bang, bang. It's so compelling. Like the climax of this book is so good and so earned, and it's exactly the climax that this book needed, and it is well worth the price of admission to see how kind of everything turns out, and then what happens next after the conflict has been resolved. It's very good. And there are some heartbreaking moments in this book, and there are some like yes moments in this, and there are some moments that are hard to read, and there are some really surprising moments. The climax of this book is different than what I anticipated it to be. And I think this book I'm very, very interested to see what people thought about this book. If you are watching this and you also got an arc, please feel free to shoot me a direct message so we can, or shoot me a message on Discord so we can discuss it. Because several things that occur in the back third of the book were not what I was expecting. And I am really eager to see what the populace at large thinks, because I think there is some stuff in this book that is going to be divisive, of people being like, yes, nice, and people being like, what? No. as far as some plot resolutions are concerned. There are a lot of threads to wrap up. And not all of them wrap up neatly, not all of them wrap up in the way one would think they wrap up, and then you have some that's like, okay, cool, whew, that's what I wanted, that's what I was hoping, that lasted the way it needed to be. And I think some of the plot points are going to be a little divisive. That doesn't make it any less incredible. I think what Bancroft has done is, like, he's created nothing short of a masterpiece in this series, and some of the choices that he made are basically the boldest choice that you could make. It's like, boom, I'm going for it. And I'm just like, wow, that is not what I would have expected. And it's just like, okay, all right, I'm with you, I'm going with it. But it is so worth it, and he absolutely sticks the landing. And it's just so good. It's so good. And so in the same way that the Tower kind of evokes like mixed feelings in people, the ending is the same. You leave it and you're like, oh, I did stay in the Tower, and like, I think I'm overall satisfied, but oh, I'm unsettled by a couple things. It's the Tower of Babel. What can you expect? So, it's just so good. The characters are incredible, and we get more character moments, more of characters getting a chance to shine. And if I had to pick any character, it's Edith. Edith shines in this book. She may have, in this book, overtaken Tom as my favorite character in the series, because they've always been close. But Edith in this book is just so good. She is so good, as she is just no nonsense. And she's like, you know what? We're getting this done. Like she's just, after Wakeman Georgina, she's done. Like, she's had enough of this foolishness. And Edith having to take charge of this crew and take on the Sphinx's quest that she gave to her, it's just, Edith is awesome. Edith is so freaking awesome. So if you like Edith, Edith is so awesome in this freaking book. Just as an example, like, you know, they're supposed to be collecting the paintings, right? And Edith has a quote where she's thinking, it says, she was mad because she cared, and resented them because they didn't, or resented anyone that did not. And it's just wearing on her that no one really cares about the original point of the paintings, which these people were supposed to safeguard, all these ringdoms were supposed to safeguard. And she's just had enough. Like, Edith cares about what she's doing. And she's mad at all these people who freaking don't. And another great quote that I love is, tyranny had many victims and rarely spared its own. And that just goes right into these themes of tyranny and control that I was talking about earlier. And one of the great themes in this book is, again, Bancroft uses the Tower to kind of, because the Tower is a tribute, it is a celebration of human achievement and human engineering, but it is also a monument to human vice and human pride and the worst in humanity. We have seen the Tower really strip everything from everyone. And then you have Senlin standing like, you know, an unbendable oak in the eye of a hurricane, trying to bring some kind of hope to his friends. And so this book has a lot to say about kind of corruption and decay, about how things that were meant to be paradise, or things that were meant to be ideal, and this idealism, how quickly we can abandon the principles that achieve these things, that achieve our ideals, that achieve these paradises, and about how quickly we and the natural world around us can slip into this decay as humankind becomes more and more obsessed and proud and self-absorbed and greedy, and then we just start taking from our fellow man and treating them like tools, and deifying ourselves while casting down those we view as inferior to us, and how this rot can easily set in, and without tending to it, can just affect, starting with the individual, can just go out and just rot society itself. Freaking the Romans learned this the hard way in the late Republic, where any Roman virtue that the Republic had once been founded on, when they needed to band together to stop the constantly being surrounded by enemies, where it just rotted. Like, Caesar was convinced the Republic was rotten. And, you know, there it was. I really like what Bancroft has to say in this book about that, and about how quickly we forget things from even a couple generations ago, about how we don't remember things as they happened, how history changes as it is passed down if we don't tell our children about it or keep accurate records. It reminds me, there's a verse in Judges that said, "And there arose a generation after them who did not know the Lord and that which we had done for Israel," because the Israelites just stopped telling the next generation about their deliverance from Egypt and about their deliverance in the desert. It's a lot like that, where if you do not pass down the history and the things that have happened and the traditions and the values of the past, then the present will find a way to, you know, kind of do what they want. And it is just a fascinating book. And Josiah Bancroft is a brilliant writer, and I am so excited for more people to read this book so that I can talk to more people about it and talk spoilers, because there are many, many other kind of like thematic things that I cannot mention because it will spoil stuff. There's a lot that happens that even kind of alluding to will spoil things. Trust me, I have spoiled nothing that I have said that I didn't say outright will ruin your enjoyment of this book, and you still won't be able to know what's happening in this book. Bancroft is not afraid to take chances, and I think, by and large, for the most part, they all pay off. Guys, on the King Finn approval system, I give this book a superb plus. It's a superb plus. It's a fantastic book. Out of 5 stars, I give it 5 stars. It's a 5-star book. This whole series is a 5-star. It's a 5-star series. I gave every single one of the books 5 stars. I'm giving this one 5 stars as well. Guys, there is still time. If you have not read the Books of Babel, there is still time to read and catch up. If you have not pre-ordered Fall of Babel, oh, for the love of humanity, please pre-order Fall of Babel. It is absolutely worth it. And if you've been wondering, does Bancroft stick the landing? Yes. Yes, he does. Guys, that is it for me today. Again, I thank you to Orbit and Angela and Josiah Bancroft for the opportunity to read this book early. It means so much to me because this series has just meant so much to me. Join us on Twitter, any of you other #Senlin superfans. It's just, I'm so excited for Bancroft's next project. Guys, as always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys.